What's up, guys? Welcome to Worship Life. Today we're going to be talking about tone journeys. Yeah! Sounds good.
Thank you.
Welcome to Worship Life, guys. Today we've got Jeremy, who's one of my lead guitarists on my worship team, and we're going to talk about the tone journey and what that means. And I think every guitarist goes on a tone journey, and I like Jeremy's. It's really interesting, and so I wanted to bring him on and just talk about it, and then see how his pedal board ended up, and then and how he kind of got there. So let's start at the beginning. Jeremy, before you became a musician on a worship team, what kind of music did you do?
Well, that's a crazy story because I started up in metal, doing like heavy industrial stuff back in like 2001. I was the lead singer of a band that we went through a couple different names, and then as that progressed, I branched out in a couple like other things, like doing like keyboard stuff, but mostly with guitar. I recorded a lot. I did all the recording on our albums, and I think I played a few times live to fill in, but I never was a guitarist. And then just about 6 years ago, I decided in my life that I wanted to focus on like one instrument rather than kind of being a jack of all trades. And so I decided to really take guitar seriously. I wanted to learn how to do solos. I wanted to learn how to be, play fast and to be efficient and to like play cleanly. So I just started playing every day, all the time. And eventually, when I found Christ and came back to the Lord and found Life Point, it was on my heart that I needed to use the gifts I've been given for His purpose. And so, I met you, and you invited me to try out. And I remember thinking
it was like a surprise audition.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him that I was auditioning. I was like, hey, just come by and we'll jam a little bit, and then we'll see where it goes.
And I think the first time that the challenges of what the difference between doing like rock or metal or anything contemporary on like compared to doing worship is when Joe looked at me and he's like, okay, so I'm sitting on G and what will you do? So I was like, what do you mean will I do? I guess I'll be on G too. And I was just taking notes, and it's just funny looking back. I know what he was looking for is that in moments of worship when things are quiet and people are praying or they're saying something, like the guitar player needs to fill out and do little ambient things. And looking back, I see what you're talking about. It's just funny how you really have to change what you do and how you think about music for worship compared to really anything else. I think it's really different. So I started off with what was it? It was a Line 6 Spider HD100, I think, amp, and it had a little pedal thing that had 4 pedals on it, so I could switch between presets and a volume thing. And I figured that would do everything. I'm like, nope, that's all I need. It's got built-in reverb. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm great. And then I saw Joe's board and a couple other guys at the church's board, and they had these pedals everywhere. And I'm like, nope, not going to be that guy. I'm just going to use what I got. It sounds great. And then when Joe started having me like do some stuff for the team and start playing, I instantly noticed that like I could not replicate anything that you guys are doing. Right. And I didn't even really know how to. I'm like, how do you even get that sound? Like, what is that sound? What makes that sound? And I remember just bugging you over and over. I'm like, hey, like, what's this do? How do you do that? And you ran me through your pedal board, I think like 4 or 5 times. And that was like a big struggle for me, just to like, okay, I gotta set aside what worked before, and I have to reevaluate. Like, okay, what do I need to do moving forward? Like, what should I get rid of, and what should I keep? And what do I need to do to be effective in worship music? And that's what kind of led me down a path that to finding like the tone. And I would be honest that my tone was not great to start with. But I think that's the basic story of a lot of people, is that it takes time to build. It takes a lot of money and time to build like what you want your sound to be.
Well, and as a side note, I feel like the electric guitar, and specifically in a worship band context, because you do have so many instruments, and you have keys filling up a lot of space, or you have pads filling up a lot of space, and you always have your bass and your drums and multiple singers and acoustic guitar, and sometimes you have 2 electric guitars. To play electric guitar on a worship team, you have to be really specific about what your tone sounds like. You could have a good sounding tone for a recording, or a good sounding tone for just playing at home, and it would sound great. And then you get into a worship in a church, and you go through a PA system, and then all of a sudden, either you can't hear yourself, you're not coming through at the right times, you're way too harsh, you're just making it so you can't hear the keys anymore, you're kind of getting in on the bass's frequency. And so for electric guitar, it's really important the frequency that you're hitting, and it's a pretty specific thing. And so then you have to dial that in, but you also want to don't sound too thin.
Yeah.
And so it really is kind of this it's kind of like an art of just going back and forth with EQ and different amps and different things. But you have to know what you're aiming for first. And I think that's really the hardest part about getting into this type of worship, is figuring out what that role is, and then going from there.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because you listed all those struggles that you don't want to be, and I'm pretty sure I hit every single one of those at one point in time. Like, and it's so true. You really have to be like aware of not just what you sound like at home. Like, I would spend all week like practicing, for the upcoming Sunday, and I'm learning my lines, and I have my tone all set up in my room, only to come here and like as soon as it starts going, it just sounds so different. Like, either it's too bassy, or there's this ice picky kind of sound going on, or it's just crushing my ears. And that happened a lot. And so what I'll show you when we go kind of through my board is what I've done to go around that challenge. And something that both Joe and Mac, who's on our team, also talked about is like have your home sound separate from your worship sound. Spend some time coming down to the church if you can, and like dial in your sound when it's just, and if you can, like have someone play for you so you could hear it out, and so you could hear from different areas in the auditorium. And I feel that was a big key to what helped me develop like my tone. But to rewind a bit, I did have to make some investments in order to kind of make the worship board with some help from the guys in the church. They're awesome. They loaned me pedals to try. They loaned me everything from power to cables to kind of help. And in fact, even the board itself, the wooden board down here, is actually Joe's old board, and it's massive.
That I put together in an afternoon.
And I have to go through my house like sideways to like fit it through our hallway. Otherwise, like,
it's massive.
I had to repaint the side of the walls because there's like black scuffs everywhere. It's really big.
So looking at your board, it's really interesting because you have like this mix of like high-end, expensive pedals.
Right.
And there's a couple in the middle, but it's really like a few high-end pedals, and then a bunch of like the cheapest things you can buy, essentially. But you've gone through a lot of different pedals. I mean, I know that this is like only like half of your overdrive collection at the moment.
Yeah, I'm the joke of the team, because I had like at one point I had like 8 or 9 different distortion or overdrive pedals on my board because I couldn't figure out which one to do. And what's funny, like price aside, like I think the first one that I purchased outside of the first one I purchased was this blue one, the Pure Sky, and then I also had this orange that was kind of my bass tone that was also by the same maker of whatever.
Yeah, and the Pure Sky is a Timmy clone.
And it's amazing. I will never remove that from my board.
It's also like my favorite pedal.
It is my favorite pedal, and I use this for like my first stage of a breakup, so it has a little bit of distortion to show you what it sounds like. So my clean sound sounds like just love being able to contour it a bit to the needs of the song or the set.
Okay, so let's start. I just did a video on the most budget friendly board that you can possibly do that I would still use on a Sunday morning. And so I want to start at what I think is the most basic thing, and that is the amp and the cab.
Okay.
And so let's start with that. So when you first joined the team, we couldn't fit your cab in our box because it was a 4x12.
4x12.
We had nobody else using a 4x12 in our ISO boxes, and so it didn't fit. And so you ended up using your Pod 2.0?
My Pod 2.0 from, I don't know, 2004 maybe is, I think, when that came out. It was a while back. And interesting enough, that thing actually could hold its own pretty well, and I think you can find videos online where it shows it still.
If you haven't seen the Andertons video comparing the Pod to the
Temper and something else.
Amplifier? It's that one.
The
2.0 or whatever it is, the red multi-effects thing.
It held its own in that video.
Yeah, no, it sounds really good. So watch their videos. That's great.
So I started with that, and that led me for a while where I started sort of filling in other gaps. And then I heard about Line 6 coming out with the Helix Stomp, and I was always interested in Helix. I heard the guys talk about Helix. I never tried it, so I checked out some videos online. Actually, I was like circling around it like a shark for, I think, almost 2 months, I think, and had it
one day randomly.
And then one day, and it was funny because I probably had it in a shopping cart where I was like hovering over purchase for maybe like 4 or 5 different times where I had it in a cart, and then it was expensive. It was a pretty expensive pedal when it came out, and it still is kind of expensive. And then finally I just went for it, and honestly, this thing has been amazing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's all the same sounds and effects as the full size Helix, except you can only do 6 things at a time.
6 things at a time, so you are
limited. Which is plenty for using it as your bass tone, plus an effect or two.
Yeah.
And so generally, what you do is you do amp, cab.
My delays.
Your delays.
And then I'll have an EQ on there, and then I also do 1 or 2 drives, just to mess with. Do I use them? Not sometimes. I actually don't, but I'll get into how I had that set up. But right now, what I'm using is a deluxe reverb amp model. I found it by accident. Honestly, I didn't think I first tried an AC30. I tried a Matchless, and I both use those both still. But this one's kind of been my flavor of the month, I guess. I really enjoy how it sounds, and how it kind of breaks up, and how it just there's something about it, the tone that I like. From there, I'm using the cab that I selected for this is a 4x12 vintage. I think it's a greenback, vintage 30s, I believe is what is on here. And I have the microphone set to Neumann 87, which is like a high-end condenser mic.
And the nice thing about the Helix Stomp is the cab sims are great. You can buy extra ones for it that sound really good. There's a bunch of stock ones that sound really good. You just got to play with it for a while and find the one that really works.
That's true.
But it's really good.
I really enjoyed that, and what really blew me away, so one thing I was nervous about is that I had so much space on here. Before I had this Stomp, I had as big, it was about the same size as Stomp, if not a little bigger, and that was 2 different delays and a reverb channel, and it was the Ocean Machine from Moore. And I love that thing, and I love the delays on there, but the one thing I was worried about is that I didn't want to have this plus that. It would just be too many buttons and lights and too much space. And this thing surprised me with the delays that it has stock in here. It has some really, really awesome analog tape type of delays. It also does digital. I could run 2 different delays. I could actually run more if I needed to. I could run up to 4, I think. And so it really handles everything I need for delay, and that was a surprise. And I'm really excited about what it could do. And it's so easy to do a tap tempo, as you see on the red flashy light, to be able to make sure they're in sync with the song. I don't have to worry about other pedals interacting with that. So everything that's time-based outside of some special reverbs is within this unit. So I only have to tap tempo one thing and to have it all work, which is great. So I'm really excited about that. So it goes out of the amp into the cab, out of the cab through some delays into an EQ.
Gotcha. So on a Sunday, Do you use all of these pedals? I mean, like on a normal Sunday?
No.
Okay, so take me through like your
What I
basic
use, yeah.
clean tone, maybe like a rhythm tone, a
Yeah.
lead tone, what you're using, and then I'd also like you to talk about the Ventris for me.
Yes,
because-
that's kind of the star of what really helped define my sound was that reverb. It really opens a lot. So my basic sound is that for one, I have the current patch that I'm on. This reverb is kind of thick. I wouldn't usually use this for anything that like more ambient is what I'd use this for. Nothing for that's really driven or hard. But for my basic clean tone as it stands is like this. And then through the neck pickup.
And then is this like just a mild reverb?
This is probably my heavier reverb.
This is your heavier reverb.
Yeah.
And would you usually use that on a clean tone?
Yeah, I'd use it for a clean tone if I'm doing background sounds or just kind of filling in room. My normal reverb for kind of normal play is just like a hall reverb, which it doesn't have. That other reverb actually had two reverbs at once, so it's a little thick. This one's just a single hall. And then from there, my stage one distortion is this guy, and that would be for anything for like certain types of lead lines. Something like that, or even some doing some power chords. It gives it some extra beat. And then from there, it really depends on the song. I have a couple different options as you see. The yellow one is kind of designated as my stage 2, and that's a little bit for more energetic songs, I would say, maybe heavier
and this
songs.
is a clone.
And this is another clone, and I used to use something else here. I'm kind of still
Clone.
messing with it here. But this does get a little bit heavier, and I can dial back the gain on this to fit whatever type of song we were gonna do. So if it was something like, and you can also kind of use it for solos as well, like. But that is that guy. These other ones are like the green one is a fuzz pedal. That's only for special use needs. Like I think we did a couple songs where I used it only once or twice. And the purple is a very high gain, and actually both the purple and the gray are high gain distortions. Very seldomly used, unless we're doing something that's extremely heavy. Like we played a heavier
Yeah, we
version.
used it last week. Right?
Yeah, we used it last week
Yeah.
on a heavier song, and that sounds like so. So it's more of like a, I don't know, rockish 80s kind of.
Yeah, it's
kind of, it's not, it doesn't
great
come
sounding.
out. It's great.
It really is great sounding.
At home, I use it a lot
Yeah.
when I'm jamming at home, doing my own thing. But for worship, we try to fit it as needed. Only when it's useful, when it's heavy. I have a EQ pedal in here that I don't really use right now. It's more of a backup in case something doesn't sound right in the room, and I don't want to have to mess around with my patch. It's easy just to like bend over. Like if it's like the highs are too bad or whatever, just to adjust it on the fly.
And that's a really important thing to note too, is because you can EQ pedal is really important to have there in case, because when you go into a different place than you set your sound, like a church, if you're at the same church every week, it's a little easier because it doesn't change. But if you ask your sound engineer, or if it's a bigger church, especially whoever set up the sound and EQ'd the room, if you can see like on your processor or on your board the general EQ settings of the room, that's really really interesting to see, because you might have a bunch of highs taken out, or there's this one frequency that they had to take out a bunch because of the way the sound bounces in the room. And so the way that you play at home and what you hear is not going to be the same as any venue that you're in. And so having an EQ pedal on there, whether or not you use it, but just to adjust when things aren't sounding quite right is, I think, really important.
Yeah, and it's saved me a couple times having that on there.
All right, so let's go to the big thing on your board. Let's go to
Yes.
the Ventris.
Oh boy, the Ventris.
You know, we both think that reverb is the most important thing.
Yes.
As an effect.
Yes.
On, like, if you only had one effect, it would be reverb.
Yes.
And I use the Big Sky, and he uses the Ventris.
Yeah.
And so that's really the big battle. And the thing is, after using both of them, they're just both so good.
Yeah. Right.
The Ventris actually has a little bit higher quality DSP, and the Ventris also has two reverbs that it can run at the same time, and that's really just because it's 5-6 years newer
yeah.
than
Right.
the Big Sky.
Yeah.
But they will both get you to where you need to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just talk us through some of your reverb settings
Yeah.
on there, whether you're using a single or dual reverb on that setting and what they are.
Definitely. So I have the first one here is a single reverb, and that's what I kind of already showed you, where it's just like a decent hall, and I keep this little guy on here so I could adjust it as needed. And that adjusts the amount of mix in there. I tried using it on the like the decay, and it just didn't work as well. Because what I found I need is sometimes less reverb. So just putting it on the mix allows me to control how much of the effect you hear.
That's an interesting note. I also, on my Big Sky, I use an option knob to do that same thing. But on my previous pedal, the Source Audio Dimensions, I used it on decay. So depending on how the pedal works and just playing around with it for a while, you can put that on, both of them if you want,
Right.
or you can just choose one or the other. But I think, even if you have a bunch of presets, you're never going to cover every single sound with reverb that you want on the fly. And so putting an option knob on there to adjust it and fine tune it for that specific part is really important.
Yeah, and just try not to make it complicated. I found whenever I would try to do different patches on this pedal, that it tries to be handy if they could have 4 up to 8 presets, but how you move between them can get kind of dicey if you're stressed, or especially on stage, like when you're having to do a part and then all of a sudden something doesn't sound right, you'll easily make a mistake and either go back too far. And there's one reverb, which I'll show you in a minute, that is the reverb you don't want to land on accident. And I'll show you that one in a bit. So the hall's like kind of what we showed. And then I also have a little bit thicker reverb. This one's actually 2 different reverbs. It's using a shimmer, but without shimmer, which is odd, I know. But it's like a shimmer reverb without that shimmery octave up or the other tones that are in there. And then I have it mixed with a swell. And the swell kind of just...
Oh, that's swell.
Yeah, it's swell. It's
Okay. I'm sorry.
We're gonna cut that out.
We're not gonna cut that.
This one's a little bit more prevalent in the mix. It's higher mixed. It's meant to be more for like lead lines. Like if I was doing like something like, I don't know, Reckless Love or something like. So it has a pretty good decay, and when you're doing things like this nature, that swell part really kind of brings up. It just brings in something nice that I really liked. So I use this fairly often. And then I have another one that also uses a bit of delay. Now this one I also really like. It's using an E-Dome, which is kind of like their big reverb. And then it also has an echo, so like a delay effect on there. And if I use this option one, I could time it with my current delay, so I could do something like 8 notes. This one's set to quarter, so I'd have to kind of go something like that. And then
That's fancy.
so.
I did not know that it had tap tempo reverb.
Oh, you didn't know
No,
that?
I didn't know that. That's really cool, though.
Actually, you can set this thing to do some other crazy stuff. I have something that I'm working on right now for the church. It's not ready yet. I've got to make some adjustments. But the premise is that on one channel, I will have like one set of reverbs, and then when I click this, it engages that second layer, or the second engine will engage it on top of it. And that is something that I think it would be really useful. And if I could just get it sounding right now, it's an issue with the mix, and I have to use this app, and it's kind of, it's something that's work in progress.
So you heard it here, folks. If you're a nerd and you like to play around with sounds, especially plugging into the computer and messing with sounds forever, it's a great
Ventress. Yeah, the Ventress, and I could use an app actually, and that's what I used to use it on this app. But now I just put it to my computer, and it's just a little bit easier just to kind of click through it and just switch between settings. So this is the reverb you don't want to accidentally fall on, and actually this happened during service a few weeks ago, and it was a nightmare. So this is something that I use just as swells in the background, and it sounds like this. Now, what's in here? I don't know. It's a shimmer mixed with. This was actually made by an anonymous user. Like what you could do with this pedal is there's a on the app you could actually download a bunch of people. They upload different patches, and I was just like cycling through what was uploaded that week, and I landed on this one. So I feel really bad. I don't remember who did it, but you know, props to him. He's awesome. So this is kind of my use it. It's like almost have like organ like qualities to the background of it.
It's a nice swell sound.
But if you don't swell it, it sounds a little abrasive. And it has a little bit of a touch of attack.
So, it still sounds nice.
It still sounds, it could be useful, yeah. Other than that, I try not to switch up my reverbs too much, only because the more steps you put in your routine or what you're trying to do for parts, it leaves more opportunities to screw something up, I feel like. And I'm trying not to, screw things up. Well, not just screw things up, but I want to. I feel like if I'm too focused on, all right, next I gotta hit this button plus this button, then I'm not paying attention to what we're called to do, and that's like to lead worship and to be involved with worship, and to not just be thinking about, okay, I have to do this part, then I have to hit this, and I try to keep it as simple as possible, while still trying to deliver, good experience, like good music, add to the song, in a pleasure, in a way that's nice. That's pretty much it. That's the board. Yeah, this board wouldn't have happened without you guys and the support that all the worship team happened. They gave me great advice and really helped me direct me and help me really develop as a musician. The selections I make of what to play, what not to play, which we really didn't talk much about. But so
we'll
really,
do a different video.
This is a combination of everyone, of the whole team, helping, giving suggestions and positive, just all feedback, really, not just positive feedback, just to help develop me.
Thanks for sharing your tone journey, Jeremy, and your current pedal board. We'll go over the guitar at a different time in a different video. And anyway, thanks. This has been Worship Live, episode 2.